How are you all?
Good.
Doing all right. Thank you, Craig.
Good. And you? How are you feeling today?
I'm good. Yeah, no side effects from the vaccination, so just a little bit sore on the arm.
Nice.
Okay, so let's start. Let's go around, and each one of you just say 1-2 sentences how you are today, and then 1-2 sentences on your impression from the reading of chapter 3. So, who wants to start? Santiago?
Yeah, sure. Well, how I am today? I'm doing all right. Thank you. It's quite sunny outside. It's been quite hot in Monterey, and today is cloudy. So happy that it's not so hot today. And in terms of the reading, it was interesting to see how deeply you could get into the term equivalence. it felt like it was like, with some differences, very, very, very similar. It was quite dense. I found it quite dense and long. I wasn't able to read the whole case study. Just look at it through, because it took me the whole time just kind of trying to read and go over the first parts.
Yeah. Okay, no worries. And who's next? Danny, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. It was interesting to read this chapter. I think that box with a literal transfer, minimal transfer, and literary transfer was very interesting to see how it was. Everything was put in each of the process, how it was structured. Yeah, I think some things will be useful.
Useful in what way?
Yeah, in the process of translating.
Okay.
Just to follow some of these examples.
Yeah. Okay, good. Katarina.
I couldn't finish the chapter actually. Yes, but it's I think sometimes to look at these things, you really have to go into detail, right? And when you go to the examples, you always discover some details which actually can't be put in a scheme of things. And of course, schemes of things, they exist and they are useful. But when you go into detail, you always start to look at things that don't work out in these schemes, right? Or the structures of things.
What did you find?
And then I think that one of the things that the chapter started with was the question of, for instance, when you try to create certain equivalents, and especially when you try to think about the effect, or not the effect, when you think of a translation, trying to create the same effect in the target language that he was able to make in the source language in terms of their readers. And there was this criticism which was done to this kind of theories made by Lefebvre and others, but obviously something that we think right away is, how can you scientifically really measure this kind of effect? You cannot it's not just a question of cultural difference. It's not a question a difference in times, right? But even within the communities of the source language and in the target language. I mean, even when you think about readers in themselves, how they react and how they react differently and how they interpret differently.
Yeah.
It's quite difficult to establish a kind of structure for that.
Yeah. Okay, really good point. Yeah, definitely. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Nerea.
Yeah, first thing, this book is pushing me to look ways to study and work digital. It's very dense. I have difficulty to absorb things from the screen. So I've been investigating some app to have excerpts, make links. I'm trying to go digital, thanks to you. I'm taking the opportunity. I think it's a whole world to work text in a digital way. Make mind maps, relate things. So it's a whole new window opening in terms of how to work when you try to get information from a text, because I find the linear way is not easy for me to retain in my brain without taking notes on a paper.
Yeah.
So I was playing around with that. And then I found very, very interesting all this is not intuitive, the way we translate. I thought, translating from legal texts to playing around with literature, I thought it was a matter of type of text, that you have more or less margin in the way you translate. And actually discovering that is all, there's so many choices, actually, is conscious choices and decisions that we make in the way we translate. Is very interesting, and also is giving me tools to look. I've always liked looking at bilingual texts or trilingual just for the pleasure, but I didn't have tools to analyze. And now is a little whole opening to look through the door, is a whole universe opening up. I see there are ways, things to look at when you try to compare. And I was just captivated by the magic of seeing different texts, and they sound like it was written in English. It sounds like it's French, or it sounds like it's Spanish. And actually there's all this work behind that we're getting into now. So I find that very, very interesting to see the tools and the choices and decisions that are involved in having that result.
Okay, yeah. Interesting, a very interesting perspective. Yeah. I think a lot of what we're doing, for me, is possible to look at in I have a similar perspective sometimes, where I'm thinking, what's this intuition versus process or procedures. But I think sometimes what we're doing is we are making visible what happens intuitively in the best case, and then we are sort of giving ourselves tools which we can use for the difficult cases. So I think, a good translator who has practiced is doing a lot of this, sort of intuitively as they go along, and they're just typing, and they're not consciously looking at this, looking at that, doing this analysis. But sometimes they get stuck. And so then you start to make conscious what you were doing subconsciously. And I think if we look at that, that's an interesting perspective on this module, of what we're doing. Great. Okay, thank you. And Drupchen.
I find it, of course, interesting and kind of familiar to me, because it talks a lot about linguistics, especially NIDA, and then all the analysis, linguistics, etc. But I still find that it is putting something that is simple in a very complicated and very kind of jargonizing way.
What was that word?
Putting a lot of jargon.
Jargon, yeah. Sorry.
Jargon,
yeah.
Yes. And so, yeah, I think that, we could say much more simply what Nida says, and it would make much more sense to people if we did not use all these things. But then, of course, he was, I guess, a university professor or something that needed to hold his post behind a lot of theoretical knowledge, etc., etc. So,
right, yeah.
It was interesting. They even said right after Nadia for the next one, they said like there hasn't been much criticism of his work and all of that. And one of the things is because there's so many terms for things that are happening that it's hard to kind of keep up with how many things are putting. I think I remember we just read this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm certainly, as the aim of this course, as I see it, for you as a group, is not, if you were doing a master's in translation studies at a university, it might be the case that you have to really remember, Nida said this and used this term, and then this was criticized by Newmark, who used this term, that sort of level of knowing who said what and who used which jargon. That's the sort of knowledge which you might be having to learn for a different type of course. That's not my aim. My aim is not to for you in 6 months for you to remember whether Nida said this or used that, or who exactly, but it's to be aware of all these things. And your answers of how you've read this chapter are reassuring that this is happening. You're looking at these, you're criticizing it, but you don't need to remember whether Nida used this jargon or Newmark said that. You can if you want. It's interesting, but that's not the aim. Okay. I can certainly echo some of what I've heard. I think the chapter is very dense, and in places confusing. And at about half an hour before the end of our session today, I'll ask Jupchen to summarize it all in very easy terms for us to see if we got it right. Because
I don't know why I said that.
But we'll work our way through the contents of the chapter, and hopefully anything that's a little bit confusing might become either more confusing or less confusing. We'll see. But it's definitely useful and interesting stuff once you get beyond the confusing jargon, and you've already confirmed that from your answers. First of all, I want to take you to a world far, far away, and then we will work our way back to where we are now. Any Star Wars fans amongst you?
Kind of, not crazy fan, but yeah.
Okay, so you might recognize this scene. We're just a quick scene from Return of the Jedi. Let me share the screen. It's not that long. We'll go back to the beginning.
What, Chewie? What, Chewie? Hey, I don't get it. It's just a dead animal, Chewie. Chewie, well, wake up! Nice work. Great, Chewie. Great. Always thinking with your stomach.
You take it easy. Let's just figure out a way to get out of this thing. Han, can you reach my lightsaber? Yeah, sure. I'm not sure that's such a good idea. It's a very long job.
Hey, point that thing someplace else. Hey, don't. You'll be all right. Chewie, give me your crossbow. Oh, my head. Oh, my goodness.
Ayun, puno daw to.
Trito, Dobra, Isoyoto, Amuno, Noka. Do you understand anything they're saying?
Wasn't that part of the General Refuge verses?
You recognize it?
A little bit.
Yeah. The first two verses.
Right? Super cool.
So who were we listening to there? What were these creatures?
They're in the planet where they are. They're kind of like the how do you say it? The people from a planet, the natives, maybe. The natives from a planet that
Indigenous, yeah.
The indigenous people where the Empire had a base.
Yeah, the Ewoks. These are little cuddly. Some people say cuddly creatures. They're called Ewoks. Yeah, and the language sounded familiar. Yeah, you picked up on.
Yeah.
Was this the exchange between Carolee and Tashi the other day by mail, wasn't it? I didn't see it, but I didn't check it. But it was about this, wasn't it?
I think they were talking about this or something like this. Yeah.
Okay. What was that?
But I didn't actually follow it. I don't know if you, Drupshani, have you seen what Tashi? I think it was Tashi who answered. I don't know.
No, not me.
Yeah. So the when people make films, they they have this issue. These people from a different planet. They probably speak a different language. So or these creatures. So they have to sort of think, what are we going to do? And this for this movie, for the Ewoks, their inspiration was apparently a Mongolic language. So we're sort of over in getting close to the Tibetic languages, and some people also say that they took elements of Tibetan as well for the inspiration for the language. So that might be why it sounds familiar, and certainly the prayer sounded very familiar. Yeah, and then I think the culture where they took this inspiration is also one where there's the Buddhist culture there. But still, the language is actually fairly primitive. And if we take a more modern movie, we'll just have a very quick look at a more modern movie called Avatar. Can you see this one now? Yeah. The language in this film is much more well developed. So in the Ewoks they were given the sort of the sounds of the language, but it wasn't really developed with a full grammar and a full syntax and everything like this. Whereas for this movie, they invented, a real language with, a full language with full syntax, morphology, and everything that belongs. We'll have a quick listen to that one.
Mm-hmm.
It is decided. My daughter will teach you our ways. Learn well. Jake Sully. Then we will see if your insanity can be cured.
This language, there's another website here. There's even people have developed a way of writing it. So
Ayailan Roya, Sielanur, Fiaya, Lena Viniwot, Wellingati Camille, Mawaya Island, Ultengaru Sirayo, Fpole, Angalwer, Fit Anift Avon of Arets to Lamwell, Fiarilen Viol, Fwengea, Diaunit, Ulteumo Futa, the Fiawinturi, Oya, Parengani Wat, Spiva Weterut Mawaya Island, when it Anengaru.
okay, so just a quick sample.
Huh.
And that sounds like African languages of
Yeah.
the South. They have this kind of
Yeah.
click. I don't know how to call that in English, but in French it's click.
Yep, we say click in
Click also.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know exactly what inspiration he took for that language, but it does sound a bit like that. It sounds like it's got this click in there.
Mm-hmm.
And the actors all have to learn the language then, I mean, they don't necessarily learn to speak it freely. They learn the lines, but they're coached by a dialect coach the same way that if you were trying to, speak a specific accent of Portuguese or English or something. What I want you to do is I want you to invent a language in a very minor way. I'm going to give you a few very simple sentences. And so I want you to open up a new document, a new page, just a blank page. And I'm going to give you some very simple sentences, and I want you to just random think of an idea. It doesn't have to be clever or beautiful or anything. Just try your first ideas. Let me do the same. I'll open up a page, just a minute. So think about your language, obviously I just want you to write it somehow using, letters that you can type, but, are you gonna, have a word order like Portuguese or English, or are you gonna have a word order like Tibetan or something completely different? Is it gonna, what's it gonna look or sound like? A little bit, just come up with some ideas. So let me share my screen and I will put the prompts. Where am I? I've lost my notes. There we go. So your first sentence, your first meaning, can you see that? Is it big enough?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Make it a little bit bigger. Okay, so this is the sort of the basics, what your message has to convey. Girl, eat apple. What's that gonna sound like, look like in your language? Okay. And then to build on that, the next sentence is with some adjectives. So the apple is red and the girl is young. Are your adjectives going to come before the noun, after the noun? Are they going to agree with the noun? What's it going to look like? Okay, got some ideas coming through? Now I want you to make questions. 2 questions. One is, maybe she's not eating the apple, maybe she's, cutting the apple. So what is she doing? And the other question is, what is she eating? Maybe it's an apple, maybe it's an orange. So we want to ask sort of, what is the girl eating? So there's 2 different questions there. What are they going to look like or sound like?
Wait, in English, what would the 2 questions be?
Perhaps, is the girl eating an apple? Or does the girl eat apples?
Yeah.
And the second question would be, what is the girl eating? And next, put in a negative. So Let's negate the eating. So she's not eating an apple. She doesn't eat apples. What are plurals going to look like in your language or sound like? Are they going to have a plural? Do you need one? Not every language automatically uses a plural. I'm sure you've had this issue in Tibetan already. And maybe those apples belong to a boy. What's that going to sound like? Let's move into the modals now. Must. And some time every day. An apple a day keeps the doctor away, as they say in English. You can go back and change things, of course, and it doesn't have to be perfect. We're just, we're having a bit of fun here, but it's related to the chapter, I promise. This next one is quite tricky. This is something that is handled very differently in different languages. We've got a must and a not together. So an obligation to not do something. So it's the boy's apple, not the girl's apple. So she's not allowed to eat the boy's apple. And again, different languages deal with this in different ways. It doesn't have to be grammar. I mean, I just use the English sentence, she's not allowed to eat, which is equivalent, basically, So that's like a lexical solution, a vocabulary solution. And the last sentence, I'm going to jump, I'm jumping more than one step now, but you're, just do the best you can. So this,
Yesterday.
somehow,
Oh wow.
yeah, so I mean, I put this in because you're all learning Tibetan, so you have to know, how do we know the knowledge? Yeah, so I see something, I saw something yesterday. What did I see? I saw the girl eat the boy's apples, and then the boy cried because the girl was eating his apples. You don't have to, the speaker C is, you don't have to put that in. I'm just giving you that because you're familiar with the concept. We mentioned it last session, we have to, in Tibetan, you need to know, how do you know this, so. Okay, if you all manage to do something, again, it's just an attempt. What I'm going to do, I'm going to split you up into groups of 2, so you can compare your results with each other. For what you can talk to in a group of 2 for 5 minutes, and then we'll come back to the main group. Have a look at the different ways, obviously the different sounds, different sentence structure, and also just check if there's things that you understood differently, because obviously what I put on the page here is what I'll do is I'm going to send this as a chat message so that you have this as well. But obviously the information here is you can interpret it in different ways. Even when I was commenting on it, I gave different English sentences which have different meaning. So you might have interpreted it differently. So check that in your group. I'll give you about 5-6 minutes, and then we'll come back together. Let me split you up. Okay, see you in a minute.